Hello everyone, and welcome to my studio. I've been crafting with paper since I was a child. It was by far my favorite toy, and I would make paper dolls and cars and all kinds of paper clothing for myself. So I'm really excited today to talk to you about how I make my paper flowers, and we'll talk about the differences between crepe paper, frosted paper, cardstock, and I'll give you all of my tips and tricks to make these beautiful designs. First, I'm going to share a little bit about my history and how I came to love paper so much. When I was young, I used to use paper for everything. I would make all of my own paper dolls because I wanted fronts and backs and you couldn't buy them that way. I remember making a paper car that I could sit inside. It was actually made out of cardboard, which is paper, and I had the steering wheel, the pedals, everything. That was a really fun adventure. Any form of paper, I just loved it, and I tried to figure out different ways to use it. That was something that I started with as a very young child. So when I went to college, I became a graphic designer, and that's similar to paper. I designed for paper, and I did that for many years along with other things. And I remember the first time I started to look at paper three-dimensionally again as an adult was when I worked at Xerox. I was designing print samples, and they had asked me to make something unique and different. And we came up with this idea to make a dress to be worn by a model that was made out of the Xerox prints. And you can see it here. So that's exactly what I did. I printed these beautiful flowers on each side of the paper and made this gown. And as I'm making this dress, I'm thinking to myself, this is absolutely amazing. I want to do more of this. So I went ahead and I did a whole runway show of these paper dresses. And you can see how the colors are different. I was playing with shapes and how it would flow down the body and how it would, hug different types and just look very fluid and beautiful like a fabric dress might. A few years after I started making paper dresses, I was working as a creative director for a wedding stationery company. And on the side, I started a blog teaching brides how to do DIY weddings. And of course, I wanted to take some of these paper elements that I had learned to do with the dresses and learn how to make roses and flowers that they could use for their bridal bouquet. But the trick was I needed to take this design that was really pretty complicated, even for me to make, because I would just make it up as I go, and distill it down so that I could create a pattern that could be replicated again and again by someone else, and that it could look as beautiful when they make it as when I make it. And that is how I started designing paper flowers. Since I had made all of these paper dresses using the Xerox printer, that's exactly how I would make my paper flowers. The first roses and the other flowers that I made, I would just print this beautiful watercolor on each side of the Xerox paper, and it's a text weight paper. It's fairly lightweight, and I would cut and form each of the flowers then. Here are some different flowers that I designed using this technique. And after a while, I started to want to branch out a little bit and not use the printed paper, since not everybody has a printer that they can do this with. And that's when I remembered this beautiful frosted paper that I had designed with as a graphic designer, making brochures and cards, and it has this frost on top that gives it a dimension. So I ordered a bunch of this paper and I started making paper flowers, and I will tell you, this is by far my favorite material to make paper flowers, is this frosted paper. If you're familiar with the Leah Griffith site, you know that I also love crepe paper. So how is crepe paper different than frosted paper, and why might I use one here and another there? First of all, crepe paper makes a flower that is so realistic, and it's very malleable, it's easy to shape, and I think that it's a great paper for many people. But what I see frosted paper used for is when you want to make a flower that has a bit more of a sculptural look. Another reason why I might use a frosted paper over a crepe paper is to get a lot of detail. And as you can see in this wreath, this would not be something that I would want to make with crepe paper. This is all cut on a cutting machine, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. But there's so much detail in this, and the frosted paper just really gives it the texture that I want for this particular project. Another thing that's unique to frosted paper is the frost itself. And when you look at these delicate petals, you can see how the color just changes a bit as the curl on the petals make that shape, because the light is hitting that frost on the paper, or the metallic, however you might want to say it, and it adds that dimension, and I think that is just so beautiful. Here are some samples of the frosted paper. You can see that a lot of it has somewhat of a metallic look to it, so metallic gold and this copper. And a lot of times when you buy the paper, it's called metallic paper. We chose to call it frosted paper so you don't get confused, because it does come in different shades of purples and pinks and reds and even greens. You can see crepe paper here. It's almost more like a fabric. It has, you know, a bit of this grain, and you can stretch it and change it. And I want to show you a perfect example of mixing the two is this beautiful lotus flower, where we have the center is made from a frosted paper, and then the petals are made from crepe paper. Here we have a variety of frosted paper flowers, and this rose here that's made in this beautiful pale coral, this was actually my very first pattern for a rose, and I think it's sometimes still my favorite. So the great thing about working with frosted paper is you can get all that detail. Like you can see here in this mum, these petals are so tiny, and just that easy curl gives it the 3 dimension that you need. This is a jasmine flower that we created with frosted paper. This hyacinth is just perfect, especially with the tiny little details inside of each bloom. And then here we have a full wedding bouquet that has 3 different flowers, and you can see from this bouquet how far you can go with this frosted paper, because if you're looking at it from afar, it looks like a bouquet made from fresh cut flowers. One thing that I did notice when I started designing paper flowers is that a lot of people used cardstock. I tried cardstock for a few flowers and decided it really wasn't what I wanted, and I'll show you exactly why. And I'm also going to show you a few tips and tricks. When I'm making my paper flowers, I want them to be very 3-dimensional and shaped. So I use a curling tool. Now when I first started making paper flowers, I would use the edge of my scissors, which you can also do, and I'll show you exactly how that works. I have here a stack of paper that's been cut on the cutting machine. That's cardstock, and then this is all frosted, and we're gonna make both flowers so you can see the difference. I'll start with this one because this is what I know the best, and all I'm going to do is slide this paper right between my fingers as if it's a Christmas ribbon. You can see how I have my thumb right there on the edge of the scissors. You can also do this with the curling tool. And this is a curling tool that Fiskars made for us, and it's exactly for this. It's to curl your paper, and all you do is place that in the palm of your hand, and then use your thumb right on the edge, and the edge is nice and sharp. I like to use it this side up versus this side because you have a sharper edge on this side. So you can see I'm just simply curling it, and that's a fairly easy curl. But then when I get to the more difficult petals, I wouldn't call them difficult, the more complicated petals, and these are the ones that are towards the back, I'll not only curl them this direction, so we'll do that first, but I'll also go back and curl them in a couple different directions. And I think this is where my flowers might look different than other paper flower designers, because I do get that real 3-dimensional shaping. And here I'm just running it on the one side, and then I'll flip it around and do it on the other side. So let's check that and how it compares to the cardstock. So you can see there's quite a bit of shape there. Okay, we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, I'm gonna have to, I don't know, maybe curl it a few times, maybe even use my fingers. The cardstock is not quite as malleable, so I can use my fingers to help. Let's see, here's another one. Kind of the same thing. When I was using cardstock originally, I just felt like it wasn't soft. It didn't have that soft flow that I wanted. Okay, and then let's try the last one here. And I can get some shape out of it, but I really do need to work it hard. Some people might ask if this type of paper, if the frosted paper might crush easier than a cardstock, and I would say no. Actually, when you get it done, it's really quite stiff. And I'll make both of these flowers and show it to you guys so you can see exactly how they work. Okay, now I'm going the other direction. I'm getting some curl, and it's looking pretty good, but I am having to work it. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and finish making both of these flowers, and you guys can see the difference between cardstock and frosted paper. So here you are, the two camellias. This one's made from frosted paper and this one from cardstock. And they're both beautiful. You could use cardstock if you wanted to, but you can see why I might like using this paper a bit better. And as far as getting crushed, you know, this one is a bit heavier and perhaps a bit stiffer, but I think because this is a softer paper, it will bounce back easier than this paper. So again, you know, test it and see which one you like the best, but you can see why this is really the paper that I fell in love with when making this type of flower. You can find the pattern and the full video tutorial for this camellia down below on the page. Just scroll down, and this is actually a free pattern, so if you know a friend who wants to give paper flower making a try, this is a perfect place for them to start. One last thing that I love about this style of paper flower making is that you can use almost any type of paper. I have used old gift wrap, I've used book pages, even magazines to make this style of paper. And you know, whatever you have in your stash, even if it is cardstock, go ahead and pull it out. The templates and the tutorials should work. For the past 6 years, I've been buying my frosted paper from a place called paperpapers.com, and we will actually be continuing to sell this paper on our site as well in packs just for you guys. And I have some other exciting news. We are also developing a line of paper in different colors. Some of the berries and the corals and even the greens, we were really hungry for some new colors. So we're developing this paper, which is actually a craft grade paper. And all of these colors will also be available in packs. There's 4 colors to a pack, and they'll be 10 by 10, so they'll fit right on your cutting machine. We have the stone fruit pack, the berry pack, we have a melon pack, and then a citrus pack. Over here in the greens, we have a succulent pack and a conifer pack. And those are 8 gorgeous greens that you can use. In addition to all these beautiful papers, we also have some pre-cut kits. As you can see, we have the camellia right here. So these are the same papers as you have right here, but they're all pre-cut for you, and all you need to do is punch them out and assemble, and we have videos for every single one of these 12 packs. When I'm designing these frosted paper flowers, I like to try and think of the flower almost from the inside out. And I want to be able to take this flat piece of paper and make it shape in all different directions to get this 3-dimensional look. And you can see some of this on some of these flowers. You can see on the back of the succulent here how I've taken the leaf and I've actually snipped it and then crossed it over to give a little bit more of a bow. And then when I come back to this side, I'm curling it the other direction, and it almost gives it an S curve. So that is a lot of shape out of a flat piece of paper. Here's something that's actually pretty unique to this flower. This is the only one that I actually crushed the petals, and there's a whole tutorial on how to do this. But you can see how the petals are cut. They're shaped, you know, each one, each size, and they go into the flower in a certain order. They have a snip in the middle, and then I actually crush the flower as well as curl it to give it this really nice bowl shape. So when making these flowers and when I'm designing them, I think the biggest thing for me is to make for sure that you no longer have a flat piece of paper, that the paper has come to full life and full dimension. And as I've already shown you, part of the way that I do that is with the curling tool or with the edge of the scissors. So there's 3 techniques: the curling tool, the edge of the scissors, the way that I've designed the pattern so that it can crisscross over, and then different ways of really making the paper form even if you're, you know, crushing it a bit. One of the questions that we get every day is, do I need a cutting machine to make these flowers? And the answer is no. I started making flowers way before I had a cutting machine, and I would spend hours and hours cutting out. And I can't say that it's something I want to do again, but there was something really beautiful about spending that time touching every single petal and cutting them out. So we are offering all of our flowers on our site with both a PDF pattern that you can just print out and use hand cut, or an SVG cut file that you can upload into your cutting machine. So with this paper, you can use any cutting machine that you can upload an SVG cut file into the software. So once you know that your machine can do that, you might want to do a little bit of a video research to see how they suggest to upload the SVG cut file. We do have a video tutorial on how to do this with the Cricut machine. But if you don't have a cutting machine, don't let that stop you. There are so many flowers that you can cut and make by hand, and they will look just as beautiful. If you do have a cutting machine, then you'll probably want to get this book, Cutting Machine Crafts, and it's published by Potter, and we actually released this about a year ago. There are some paper flowers in this book, as well as some paper plants and some wreaths, and a lot of different, paper projects, vinyl projects, iron-on projects with all the tutorials, and it includes all of the SVG cut files. It also includes the PDF printables if you don't have a cutting machine and you just want to try it out anyway. You'll find a link for this book towards the bottom of the page. When you start making frosted paper flowers, these are the 3 tools that you must have. You need a good pair of craft scissors that will cut paper. I also use this scissor for curling if you don't have a curling tool. Then I have some wire cutters, and this is to cut my stems, and these I like because it's a needle nose plier and a wire cutter all in one. And then I have my hot glue gun, and this hot glue gun is a high temperature. I find that the high temperature works the best on frosted flowers, where I'll use low temperature for felt and for crepe paper. This is definitely the one, and there's a link for this exact model below. So those are the 3 must-have tools. Then you might also want this wonderful curling tool. And I always like to have these little detail scissors on hand, and these scissors are very sharp, so that's where you can get in and cut all those little tiny details if you're cutting things by hand. And then my 6th favorite tool is my cutting machine. Whether you have one or not, you can still make beautiful flowers, but it does make the cutting process go a lot faster. Here are a few things that I like to use when I'm making my frosted paper flowers, and I've done a lot of research on the wires, so this is actually my favorite. We have here a 24 gauge, an 18 gauge, and then this is an 18 gauge thick stem. And we have links for all of those in every single pattern that we share on our site, so you can know exactly which one we use. I use these for the stems of the flowers, and then the lighter weight for leaves. Sometimes I want my leaves to be shorter that go right into the stem of my flower, so I want the lighter weight, but I would say most of the time I would use these 2 heavier weights. Another thing that I find really useful is using this florist tape that is kind of a stem wrap tape. And this will help keep things together, especially if you're adding a leaf onto the stem of your flower and you want to, tape it right on there. This is a perfect tape for that. And we have it in 3 different colors of green, so you can pick that to match the color of your leaf as best possible. And I find that this tape actually works the best when working with frosted paper. To add a little extra color onto your flowers, you might want to pick up a few of these alcohol-based markers. And I have different brands here. Here's some Blick and here's some Copic. You can also use Tombow. And you can see here on this flower how there's a bit of a gradation with the green as it moves down the leaf, and that was all done with a marker. And then the detail inside of the flowers, adding that little tiny bit of lavender to the center, was done with a marker. Another way to add color to your paper flowers is by using pan pastels. And you can see we have our pan pastel kit of our favorite colors for crepe paper flowers, and we've tested these on the frosted paper and they look great, especially if you want that slight gradation. The one thing that we will add though, when you use this on the frosted paper, you'll want to use a fixative, otherwise you can rub it off with your finger. And we like this low odor clear finish. This one is actually a gloss because we want to keep that frosted look. So once you've finished your flower, or once you've painted on the pan pastels onto your petals, go ahead and just mist this very lightly and let it dry, and then you can finish your flower. So there you have it. There's some of my tips for making beautiful frosted paper flowers, and I'm really excited to see what you make. So when you post your pictures on social, make sure and use #MadeWithLeah so that I can see what you make as well. We've had so many brides and people who make these flowers for special occasions share their pictures with us, and it really touches my heart to see what beautiful work you all do.